My name is Mari Carmen Bistue, and I'm going to talk about other options for electricity. Other options like nuclear power or clean coal technologies. And I think it's important to start talking about climate and how European Union is developing policies to reduce CO2 emissions, to understand how important is nuclear power and clean coal technologies, especially CCS, for Europe in the next few years. What are the causes of the climate change? Some gases in the Earth's atmosphere act a bit like the glass in a greenhouse, trapping the sun's heat and stopping it from leaking back into space. Many of these gases occur naturally, but human activity is increasing the concentration of some of them in the atmosphere. In particular, carbon dioxide, CO2, is the greenhouse gas most commonly produced by human activities and is responsible for 64% of man-made global warming. Its concentration in the atmosphere is currently 40% higher than it was when industrialization began. Methane is responsible for 17% of man-made global warming. Nitrous oxide is responsible for 6%. Fluorinated gases and others are emitted in smaller quantities, but they trap heat far more effectively than CO2, and in some cases are thousands of times stronger. The causes for rising emissions are burning coal, oil, and gas produces carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide. Power sector would be at this point. Cutting down forests because trees help to regulate the climate by absorbing CO2 from the atmosphere. Increasing livestock farming, cows and sheep produce large amounts of methane when they digest their food. Fertilizers containing nitrogen produce nitrous oxide emissions. And fluorinated gases produce a very strong warming effect. How is the global warming? How many degrees? The current global average temperature is 0.85 degrees higher than it was in the late 19th century. Each of the past 3 decades have been warmer than any preceding decade since records began in 1850. The world's leading climate scientists think human activities are almost certainly the main cause of the warming observed since the middle of the 20th century. An increase of 2 degrees compared to the temperature in pre-industrial times is seen by scientists as the threshold beyond which there is much higher risk that dangerous and possibly catastrophic changes in the global environment will occur. For this reason, the international community has recognized the need to keep warming below 2 degrees. This data is really important because it is related to CO2 emissions. European climate action. Preventing dangerous climate change is a strategic priority for the European Union. Europe is working hard to cut its greenhouse gas emissions substantially while encouraging other nations and regions to do likewise. They have developed adaptation strategies in the short 2020, medium 2030, and long-term 2050 to avoid impacts of climate change. Reining in climate change carries a cost, but doing nothing would be far more expensive in the long run. Moreover, invest in green technologies that cut emissions will also boost the economy, create jobs, and strengthen Europe's competitiveness. The 2020 Climate and Energy Package. What do we do in the short term? The Climate and Energy Package is a set of binding legislation which aims to ensure the European Union meets its ambitious climate and energy targets for 2020. These targets, known as the 2020-20 targets, set three key objectives for 2020. A 20% reduction in Europe greenhouse gas emissions from 1990 levels, raising the share of Europe energy consumption produced from renewable resources to 20%, and a 20% improvement in the European energy efficiency. The EU is also offering to increase its emissions reduction to 30% by 2020 if other major economies in the developed and developing worlds commit to undertake the fair share of a global emissions reduction effort. It's estimated that meeting the 20% renewable energy target could have a net effect of creating around 417,000 additional jobs, while getting on track to achieve the 20% energy efficiency improvement in 2020 is forecast to boost net employment by some 400,000 jobs. This package comprises 4 pieces of complementary legislation which are intended to deliver on the 2020 targets. The first, reform of the European Emissions Trading System, EU ETS. Secondly, national targets for non-European Union ETS emissions. The third, national renewable energy targets. And finally, carbon capture and storage, which will be discussed later. The 2030 Framework for Climate and Energy Policies presented by the European Commission in January 2014 seeks to drive continued progress towards a low-carbon economy, reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 40%, increasing the share of renewable energy to at least 27%, and increasing energy efficiency by 30%. To make the EU ETS more robust and effective in promoting low-carbon investment at least cost to society, the Commission proposes to establish a market stability reserve at the beginning of the next ETS trading period 2021. The Commission proposes a set of key indicators to assess progress of time and provide a factual basis for policy action as needed. The 2030 framework proposes a new governance framework based on national plans for competitive, secure, and sustainable energy. The roadmap for moving to a low-carbon economy in 2050 suggests that the European Union should cut its emissions to 80% below 1990 level through domestic reductions alone. In a low-carbon society, we'll live and work in low-energy, low-emission buildings with intelligent heating and cooling systems. We will drive electric and hybrid cars and live in cleaner cities with less air pollution and better public transport. Many of these technologies exist today, but need to be developed further. Besides cutting the vast majority of its emissions, Europe could also reduce its use of key resources like oil and gas, raw materials, lands, and water. The transition to a low-carbon society will involve innovation, green growth, and new jobs. By moving to a low-carbon society, we could be using around 30% less energy than in 2050 than in 2005. Households and business will enjoy more secure and efficient energy services. The European Union would be less dependent on expensive imports of oil and gas and less vulnerable to increases in oil price. Greater use of greater use of clean technologies and electric cars will drastically reduce air pollution in European cities. The roadmap sets out a cost-efficient pathway to reach the target to reducing domestic emissions by 80% by 2050. To get there, Europe's emission should be 40% below 1990 levels by 2030 and 60% below by 2040. All sectors will have to contribute. The roadmap for moving to a low-carbon economy shows how the effort of reducing greenhouse gas emissions should be divided cost-effectively between different economic sectors. All sectors will have to contribute according to their technological and economical potential. The power sector has the biggest potential for cutting emissions. It can almost totally eliminate CO₂ emissions by 2050. Electricity could partially replace fossil fuels in transport and heating. Electricity will come from renewable sources like wind, solar, water, and biomass, or other sources that are low in carbon emissions like nuclear power plants or fossil fuel power stations equipped with carbon capture and storage technology. The share of these technologies in power generation could increase rapidly from 45% today to around 60% in 2020 and almost 100% in 2050. For this to happen, the cap on emissions from the power sector under the ETS will need to be strengthened and considerable investment put into smart grids. After talk about the general policy of the action against climate change, next step is to specify the policies in the field of electricity and heat supply. So far, the previous speakers have developed issues like emissions standards, ETS, renewable policy, energy efficiency. This lesson will be discussed other options for electricity such as incentives for nuclear energy, subsidies and grants for CCS, incentives for clean coal, and incentives for R&D. We shouldn't talk about power sector without nuclear power. Nuclear power plants generate about 30% of the electricity produced in Europe. There are currently 134 nuclear reactors in operation in 14 European Union member countries. Each country can decide whether it wants to include nuclear power in its energy mix. Through the Euratom Treaty, the European Union can ensure the safe and sustainable use of nuclear energy across Europe and help non-European countries meet higher standards of safety, security, and non-proliferation. Nuclear fission is the splitting apart of the nucleus of an atom. By carefully controlling this process at an industrial scale, we can harness the large quantities of energy released to generate electricity for the benefit of society as a whole. In this way, for about 2 decades, civil nuclear power stations in a number of European countries have been responsible for producing approximately 1/3 of all the European Union's electricity. Importantly, nuclear electricity generation produces very low greenhouse gas emissions, and the raw material uranium is mined in geopolitically stable countries such as Australia and Canada. However, there needs to be a continuous effort from all involved in the industry to maintain high levels of safety in the operation of nuclear facilities, and the relatively small but very radioactive quantities of nuclear waste produced must be managed appropriately. Fusion. Fusion relies on the nuclei of atoms colliding. The first requirement, therefore, is to remove the atoms' outer layers, their electrons, to expose the naked nuclei. This is done with heat and electric fields. The atoms get hot and shed their electrons, creating a soup of nuclei, which are positively charged, and electrons which are negatively charged. This is known as plasma, the fourth state of matter. Some examples of plasma are flames, fluorescent tubes, and the sun. As the plasma gets hotter, nuclei start to collide at high speed, and a small fraction of them stick together, releasing a large amount of energy. The amount of energy released varies depending on the exact elements that are fission. Scientists have deduced that the most efficient reaction in that between deuterium is that between deuterium and tritium, which is why it's the fuel of choice for fusion reactors. Why nuclear research? Global energy demand is on the rise, and the European Union is increasingly relying on the imports to meet its energy needs. In 2007, dependence of imported energy in the European Union amounted to 53%. If the current trend continues, by 2030 energy dependence will have grown to 67%. By the same year, CO₂ emissions are forecast to exceed the 1990 limits set by the Kyoto Protocol by 5.4%. Research into both fission and fusion technology can contribute to finding solutions for Europe's longer-term energy challenge, as well as help to address citizens' concerns about current nuclear technology, in particular safety and security and the management of waste. The European Atomic Energy Community, Euratom, is a complementary research program for nuclear research and training. Euratom aims to pursue nuclear research and training activities with an emphasis on continually improving nuclear safety, security, and radiation protection, notably to contribute to the long-term decarbonization of the energy system in a safe, efficient, and secure way. The program has the following specific objectives: supports safety of nuclear systems, contribute to the development of safe longer-term solutions for the management of ultimate radioactive waste, support the development and sustainability of nuclear expertise and excellence, support radiation protection and development of medical applications, move towards demonstration of feasibility of fusion as a power source by exploiting existing and future fusion facilities, lay the foundations for future fusion power plants by developing materials, technologies, and conceptual design, promote innovation and industrial competitiveness, and ensure availability and use of research infrastructures. Fusion research. All uses of radioactive materials require appropriate safety measures to protect workers and the public. As in all high-tech sectors, research plays an important role in improving and optimizing current practices and developing more advanced technology to bring additional benefits for society. In particular, research is essential to maintain a high level of safety in the operation of nuclear facilities, including in the use of radiation in the medical sector and in the treatment and long-term management of associated radioactive wastes. The European Union funded program of research contributes to this effort. Key thematic areas of interest include safe long-term management of radioactive waste, nuclear installation safety, the design of more efficient and sustainable nuclear reactors, and the risks of low and protected exposure to ionizing radiation. Key cross-cutting areas include research infrastructures and education and training. Most funding is shared cost, with partners in supported projects providing matching financing. Fusion research. Why fusion? Why fusion research? Fusion energy has the potential to provide a sustainable solution to global energy needs. In particular, it can provide a continuous baseload power supply which is sustainable, large-scale, and environmentally responsible using fuels that are universally available. Limitless fuel. The raw fuel for fusion are water and lithium. There is around 0.033 grams of deuterium in every liter of water. Tritium is not found on Earth, but can be easily made from lithium, an abundant metal. Tritium can be made in situ in a fusion reactor by using the neutron released by the fusion reaction. If the neutron is absorbed by a surrounding blanket of lithium, then tritium is produced. Inherent safety. The volume of gas in a fusion reactor will always be low, at around 1 gram of fuel in 1,000 cubic meters. Any problem will always cool the plasma and stop reactions, so a runaway situation is impossible. Also, the raw fuels for the reactor, deuterium and lithium, are not radioactive. Tritium is mildly radioactive, but will be produced and used within the reactor. Consequently, no transport of radioactive fuels will be needed for a fusion power plant, and even the worst possible case accident will not require evacuation of neighboring populations. An environmental impact. Fusion power will not create greenhouse gases, produce other harmful pollutants, or result in long-lasting radioactive waste. Its fuel consumption will be extremely low. 1,000 megawatt electric fusion power station would consume 100 kilograms of deuterium and 3 tons of lithium a year to generate 7 billion kilowatt hours of power. To do the same, a coal-fired power station will need 1.5 million tons of coal. The fusion fuels are not radioactive. The neutrons generated by fusion will interact with the materials close to the reactor, but careful choice of these materials will ensure that no long-term legacy of radioactivity is produced by fusion power. The fusion experiments in Europe. There have been 3 generations of experimental fusion devices so far. 2 further generations of devices are planned in order to achieve the goal of commercial power generation by fusion. A 4th generation experimental fusion device is the ITER experiment, currently under construction in Carthage in southern France. The ITER reactor will operate at a nominal thermal power of 500 megawatts and will be the foundation stone of a future fusion power station. The construction of ITER began in 2008. The facility is designed to produce thermal fusion power equivalent to 500 megawatts. A 5th generation experimental fusion device is the construction of DEMO, a demonstration fusion power plant. DEMO will share many of the components proven in ITER, while also taking stock of advanced fusion materials research developed in parallel research programs. DEMO will be designed to produce thermal fusion power approaching levels relevant for commercial power production, produce net electricity, demonstrate tritium self-sufficiency, and demonstrate high reliability and the performance of low activation materials. If DEMO is successful in terms of system and performance, the DEMO reactor itself could be used as the commercial prototype, creating a fast track to fusion power. The experiments throughout Europe each have their own specialization in certain aspects of fusion research, which allows for a diversity of experiments to be carried out, enabling the selection of an optimal configuration for a future power plant. In addition, engineering R&D is carried out on a number of technological facilities. The JET, the Joint European Torus, investigates the potential of fusion power as a safe, clean, and virtually limitless energy source for future generation. It's based in Culham, UK, and is the central research facility of the European Fusion Programme. Other fusion devices in Europe are tokamaks. The various tokamaks in European Fusion Programme encompass a wide range of configurations, sizes, shapes, and heating systems, and so are able to explore a variety of operational scenarios. This provides for a greatly increased knowledge regarding future designs of fusion devices. For example, Aztek's upgrade is run at Garching, Germany. In Prague, Czech Republic, hosts the Compass D device and also operates Castor. MAST is situated at Culham in the UK, as well as JET. At Frascati in Italy operates FTU. Estoc in Lisbon, Portugal. TCV in Lausanne, Switzerland, and Tor Supra at Carthage in France. Stellarators often offer potential for continuous operation and therefore an alternative concept for fusion power plants. The fusion roadmap, therefore, dedicates a separate mission to accelerator research. One experiment is currently operated in Spain, the DG2, while another one is under construction in Germany, Weinstein 7X. There are also a large number of other devices devoted to technological aspects for the fusion program. Subsidies and grants for CCS. How does CCS work? Carbon capture and storage, CCS, is a technology that can capture up to 90% of the carbon dioxide, or CO2, produced from the use of fossil fuels in electricity generation and industrial processes, preventing the carbon dioxide from entering the atmosphere. The CCS chain consists on three parts: capturing the carbon dioxide, transporting it, and securely storing the carbon dioxide emissions underground in depleted oil and gas fields or deep saline aquifer formations. First, capture allows the separation of carbon dioxide from gases produced in electricity generation and industrial processes by one of three methods: pre-combustion, post-combustion capture, and oxy-fuel combustion. Once captured, CO2 must then be transported by pipeline or ship for storage at a suitable site. The technologies involved in pipeline transportation are the same as those used extensively for transportation, natural gas, oil, and many other fleets around the world. In some cases, it may be possible to reuse existing but redundant pipelines. Once the carbon dioxide has been transported, it's stored in porous geological formations that are typically located several kilometers under the Earth's surface, with pressure and temperatures such that carbon dioxide will be in the liquid or supercritical phase. Suitable storage sites include former gas and oil fields, deep saline formations, or depleting oil fields where the injected carbon dioxide may increase the amount of oil recovered. In brief, at every point in the CCS chain, from production to storage, industry has at its disposal a number of process technologies that are well understood and have excellent health and safety records. The commercial deployment of CCS will involve the widespread adoption of these CCS techniques, combined with robust monitoring techniques and government regulation. The framework or regulation, policy and regulation development are key factors in the deployment of CCS. There is a wide range of policy, legislation, and regulation that is relevant to CCS, from international climate change agreements through national climate and energy policy to project-specific legislation and regulation. The European Commission has supported and encouraged CCS with a number of policy instruments. The CCS Directive is the most important policy from the European Union in the Storage Directive, Directive 2009/31 EC, which is globally one of the most comprehensive examples of CCS-specific legislation. The directive creates a framework regime allowing the capture and transport of CO2 to be regulated under existing legislation and establishing a regulatory permitting regime for the storage of CO2. The directive establishes liability Responsibility and sets a range of obligations for storage, including site selection, operating, closure, and monitoring activities, and the process regarding the site transfer to the relevant competent authority. The directive lays down extensive requirements for the site selection, which is a crucial stage for ensuring the integrity of a project. A site can only be selected for use if a prior analysis shows that, under the proposed conditions of use, there is no significant risk of leakage or damage to human health or the environment. Other regulation is the ETS directive. The EU emission trading system, the EU ETS, was amended to allow capture and storage CO₂ to be treated as no emitted, providing a potential future incentive for CCS operations. The NER 300 decision lays down criteria and measures for the financing of commercial demonstration projects that aim at the environmentally safe CCS and innovate RES projects under the ETS scheme. NER 300 is so called because it's funded from the sale of 300 million emission allowances from the new entrants reserve, NER, set up for the third phase of the emissions trading system. Horizon 2020 is proposed by European Commission a 80 billion euro research and innovation funding program between 2014 to 2020, with around 5.8 billion euros to be allocated for secure, clean and efficient energy. And at last, regulation on trans-European energy infrastructure, TEN-E. This regulation aims to accelerate the approval of priority projects of common interest, called PCI, such as pipelines or power grids, so as to integrate the European Union's energy infrastructure and achieve its energy goals. For a limited number of projects, European public funding would be made available by the Connecting Europe facility. Reinventing our carbon-intensive infrastructures is critical if we are to meet our European and global climate change objectives. Achieving emissions cuts of 1895 below 1990 levels by 2050 requires a process of decarbonizing the economy. For this to materialize, new and innovative low-carbon technologies will have to be developed and deployed. New and innovative low-carbon technologies help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and create new employment and growth. The Directorate of Clima makes sure that innovative technologies are deployed safely and that their risks are properly managed. The main issue here concerns CCS, which, along with energy efficiency and renewable energy technologies, is expected to make an important contribution to meet global greenhouse gas emission targets. The European has therefore established a legal framework, as we've seen. Another aspect of directorates is provide support for the uptake of new technology. The ETS is the principal driver of the deployment of the new technology. by putting a price on carbon emissions and so stimulating the development of technologies which avoided them. But to get technologies from pilot to commercial scale, bridging finance is sometimes needed. Directorate Clima support initiative. The NER 300 funding programs provide substantial funding for the large-scale demonstration of low-carbon energy technologies in Europe, and is the world's largest program in this area. The activities of DG Clima are part of a broad network of low-carbon technology initiatives in the Commission. Some other major initiatives are the European Economic Recovery Programme, which allocated around €1 billion to CCS demonstration and 565 million to offshore wind demonstration. And another, the Strategic Energy Technology Plan, SET plan, which aims to accelerating the development and deployment of cost-effective low-carbon technologies and builds on an extensive program for research, development and demonstration of low-carbon technologies. The European Union also supports the uptake of low-carbon technology internationally in the places where it is most needed. The European Union initiated the Global Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Fund, GEERF, and Innovate Global Risk Capital Fund that will use limited public money to mobilize private investment in a small-scale energy efficiency and renewable energy projects in developing countries and economies in transition. It's both a development tool and a contribution to global efforts to fight climate change and transferring clean technologies to developing countries. The NER 300 program intends to support a wide range of CCS technologies, pre-combustion, post-combustion, oxy-fuel, and industrial applications, and RES technologies, bioenergy, concentrated solar power, photovoltaics, geothermal, wind, ocean, hydropower, and smart grids. NER 300 also seeks to leverage a considerable amount of private investment and national co-funding across the European Union, boost the deployment of innovative low-carbon technologies, and stimulate the creation of jobs in those technologies within the European Union. The funds from the sales are to be distributed to projects selected through 2 rounds of calls for proposals, covering 200 and 100 million allowances, respectively. The first award decision made funding awards for a total value of €1.1 billion to 20 renewable energy projects, but no one about CCS. This amount is estimated to have leveraged additional funding of over €2 billion from private sources. Under the second award decision in July 2014, the European Commission awarded a total of €1 billion in funding to 18 renewable energy projects and 1 carbon capture and storage project. This amount is estimated to have leveraged additional funding of over €860 million from private sources. The projects awarded funding must reach their final investment decisions by July 2016 and enter into operation by latest July 2018. The NER 300 CCS project in United Kingdom, White Rose, is called. The project concerns the building and operation of a full CCS chain, which includes a coal power plant capturing CO2 onshore and offshore pipelines transporting CO2 and offshore storage safely encasing CO2. The new oxy-fuel coal power plant and CO2 processing and compression units will be built at the Drax Power Plant site near Selby in the United Kingdom. The technology will capture 90% of the CO2 emissions from the coal power plant and average 1.8 million tons of CO2 per year. They capture CO2 will be transported by a short pipeline to a larger pipeline system and injected into storage offshore in the southern North Sea. The EEPR CO₂ capture and storage projects. 6 CO₂ capture and storage projects in Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Poland, Spain, and the UK were selected for funding under the EEPR. The total European contribution set aside for these projects is 1,000 million euros. Public and private undertakings are acting as project promoters. The maximum funding rate of the European Union is limited to 80%. The EEPR only finances projects that cover the entire CCS chain: capture, transport, and storage. In October 2013, 3 projects have been terminated and 3 projects for capture, transport, and storage are at various stages of study. All CCS projects are facing major uncertainties that risk undermining their successful implementation. The future of the carbon capture and storage in Europe, incentives from clean coal and R&D for CCS. Clean coal in this context means a sustainable solid hydrocarbon value with a focus on efficient and clean coal utilization. Digest coal use aiming at zero or significantly reduced emissions by means of enhanced plant efficiency and CO2 capture and storage. Under this activity, research, development, and demonstration of technologies should be conducted to substantially improve plant efficiency. In addition, also reliability and cost issues of coal and other solid hydrocarbon, including oil shale, conversion technologies producing also secondary energy carriers, and liquid or gaseous fuels should be addressed. Technological projects in recent years has created a remarkable new opportunity for coal. A new generation of coal-fired power plants is emerging with higher efficiency and thus lower emissions. In parallel, a suite of technologies is being developed for the safe capture and storage from fossil fuel conversion process. The challenge is to bring these technologies together into a new concept for future coal-based near zero emission power production. CCS is a technology which would allow capturing and storage the CO2 emitted by the large fossil fuel power plants, which are mostly fired with coal, lignite, or natural gas. CCS could play an important role in transition phase towards a decarbonized economy, and as such offers a unique opportunity in the medium term. The European Union has supported research, development and demonstration of clean coal and CCS technologies for almost 20 years, starting in the third framework programme between 1990 and 1994. Under the current 2020 framework, the Strategic Energy Technology Plan, the SET plan, has increased R&D investment across the Union from 3.2 euros to 5.4 billion euros per year, and is progressing towards a single integrated roadmap to guide future investments. For the 2014 to 2020 period, the Union is ramping up investment in energy and climate-related research and development, and under Horizon 2020, the new Union Research and Innovation Programme, close to 6 billion euros, will be dedicated to energy efficiency and to secure clean and low-carbon technologies, and to smart cities and communities. Increased funds will also be available for financial instruments, public-private partnerships, and SME projects. Nonetheless, the European Union will have to step up its efforts on research and innovation policy to support the post-2020 climate and energy framework. You can see in the slide a brief history of the European research policy from the 50s until today. In the 1950s, provision for research are included in the European Coal and Steel Community and European Atomic Energy Community treaties. Currently, in 2014, Horizon 2020 is the biggest European Union research and innovation framework programme ever launched. A major financial instrument for implement the Innovation Union, it will run from 2014 to 2020 with a budget of almost 80 billion euros. Horizon 2020 is part of the drive to create new growth and jobs in Europe. Horizon 2020 will lead to more breakthroughs, discoveries, and world firsts by taking great ideas from the lab to the market. Almost 80 billion euros of funding is available over 7 years, 2014 to 2020. Most of it in 3 pillars: excellent science, industrial leadership, and tackling societal challenge. In addition, this investment will attract private and national public investment. Horizon 2020 was approved by European member state governments and the European Parliament. They agreed that investment in research and innovation is essential for Europe's future, and so put it at the heart of the Europe 2020 strategy. The goal is to ensure Europe produces world-class science and technology that drives economic